This is Amie Potsic, and welcome to Art Watch on WCHE 95.3 FM, 1520 AM, and online at 953wche.com every Wednesday from 1 to 1:30. We bring you in-depth and behind-the-scenes interviews with artists and creative leaders shaping the local art scene to the international art world. I'm an artist, author, curator, and CEO of Amie Potsic Art Advisory. As an art advisor, I support collectors, artists, and institutions on curatorial projects, legacy planning, and AI. Thanks so much for joining us today on Art Watch. Today we're speaking with photographer and filmmaker Martin Krafft about his award-winning film, Ain't Got Time to Die. Thank you so much for being here, Martin.
Good to be here. Thank you, Amy.
Wonderful. I'm so glad to have you here. I want to introduce my guest. Martin Krafft is a filmmaker, social practice artist, photographer, and community organizer. He received an MFA in photography, video, and imaging from the University of Arizona. His films have been shown in film festivals around the world, including We Make Movies, Vast Lab Experimental, Berlin Dynamic, Northeast Pennsylvania, Essex Short, Goa Short, Calcutta Short Festival as well. He won Best Picture and Best Documentary at the West Courtright Center Film Festival and the People's Choice Award at the Southern Maryland Film Festival. His experiences as a handyman, service provider for the unhoused, hitchhiker, and teacher inform his art practice. Martin's award-winning film, Ain't Got Time to Die, shares the life and challenges of an adventurer striving for resilience. As I said, it's great to have you here, Martin. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, great. Glad to be here and talk about Rachel.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. It's wonderful to have a chance to talk to you about your career and also this recent film. Ain't Got Time to Die is so moving and relatable and poignant. The film shows the story of a woman on a long-awaited adventure who receives a terminal cancer diagnosis, and your relationship with her in the resulting film are really a testament to her life and your friendship. And I'd love to know how you came to create documentary films and how this project is near and dear to your heart. So tell me about your background in photography to begin with, and moving images, and the road that brought you to film as your primary language of expression as an artist.
So my background growing up, I never really thought of being an artist as a viable life path. It wasn't until I went to college, and then even then, the Emory had a very small arts major. There wasn't an art school, and I took a couple photo classes, and I became friends with one of the professors, and he encouraged me. And so once I graduated, I kept taking photographs just by myself. I went and worked on a ranch in Arizona to take photographs of the desert, and then I came back to Atlanta, and I was spent a lot of time working with the unhoused community and making photographs. And I wanted to include some of their writing because I have background as a writer, and so I made this photo book that was photographs and their writing, and then film was kind of the next step. It was bringing together my interest in photography and my interest in writing. I took a video class in grad school and just kind of really realized that documentary filmmaking could be very versatile, could do a lot of different things, and really allowed me to focus on depth of character and telling people's stories and doing that in a visual way.
Right. It's so interesting to think of the transition from photography with writing by the subjects that you're working with to documentary. It's like a very natural progression, it seems like.
Yeah, definitely. I think that wanting to share ownership of how someone is seen is yeah.
Well, that's a great point, because as a photographer, we make the final call on how the person is seen because they're literally seen through our eyes, literally, and our camera, right? So it's really like our perspective, no matter how respectful, right? It's still the photographer's perspective. So you've also said that your Quaker upbringing and belief in what you call an inner light deeply informs your work. So how does that philosophy guide your creative decisions, and what draws you to focus on people that society often overlooks?
So Quakers are really about having egalitarian values. They're so egalitarian they don't even have preachers or anyone to tell them what to think. And there's this idea that everyone has the capacity to develop their own spiritual understanding, and that can be anything. That could be a wide range of things. And so I think I try and move through the world in a way that I'm open to other people's capacity to have profound insights about the world, and even see that as my role to seek them out. And the other kind of Quaker practice that informs my work is people sit in quiet for the service. And I think with Rachel, or people on the street, I will just spend time being quiet and spending time with someone, allowing them the space to talk. And maybe they've never really had that before, to sit with somebody who wants to hear their ideas about the world and who expects them to have something interesting to say. And
yeah,
I think that,
that's
Rachel,
so interesting.
I think felt comfortable with me because, I could see that she had a lot of depth to her that hadn't necessarily been always appreciated.
Right. Well, I think that's a really interesting perspective to take, because I've been to Quaker meetings, and it's, it just is what you said, where, it's quiet unless someone feels inspired to get up and talk, and then they share whatever their insight is, and no one really responds to that. It's like they say what they have to say, and then they sit down, and then if someone else is inspired, they speak. And I find that model really, really interesting, and to think of that as an artistic practice is super compelling.
Yeah, and you saying that is kind of making me realize that one aspect of that is that when someone speaks, you don't need to respond. Like, they can just kind of exist as they are, and then it's the role of the community to sit with that and to appreciate and contemplate that.
Right, and it's a really incredible example of active listening without speaking. It's like we usually talk about active listening as kind of parroting back what the person tells you to show you understand it, right? But the Quaker meeting is kind of the opposite of that. It's like it's active listening without the verbalizing what you just heard, and you still, in that silent space, give the person the sense of being heard. Which is wonderful. Also, just your, encountering people who are unhoused, or Rachel in Ain't Got Time to Die, you are really giving maybe someone who hasn't had people want to listen to them the opportunity to share their story, which, I've taught English as a foreign language over the years. And I'll tell you what, pretty much everybody, almost everybody likes to talk about themselves. So it's like the best way. If you spark conversation and then let them run with it, that's the best way to get someone to talk to you, really, is giving them an audience. So tell me about your film, Ain't Got Time to Die, and what compelled you to capture Rachel's story in particular and then turn it into a feature-length documentary.
Yeah, so I met Rachel on a Facebook hiking group in Montana in 2020. It was in the middle of the pandemic, and we both like to hike, and our schedules were flexible, so we started going on hikes together. And at first, I thought she was just a conspiracy theorist stoner, and that was great, but I didn't think that I would, be spending the next 2.5 years of my life following her around and just kind of devoting my life to tell her story. We were going on these 12, 14-mile hikes together, and she was doing them barefoot. And she was talking about how the doctors had told her that she was dying and, that she had 2 months to live. And that just, there was this total incongruity that, here was somebody who seemed so vibrant and like she was having so much fun doing what she was doing, and so much appreciation for being able to do that, I think her sense of gratitude was really striking, and her will to live was really striking. And then that juxtaposed with, what she had been told by the doctors. And so I became very curious to see what was going to happen, and I just wanted to spend more time with her and kind of look beneath the surface of what she seemed like. And I think that people could sometimes write her off as just being very eccentric and wild, but she had some very painful experiences in her past, and had struggled with alcohol, and her time in Montana was really this kind of rebirth for her, that she had just stopped drinking and was living out of her RV and just having all these incredible experiences that I was really lucky to be able to share with her.
Yeah. One of the things I was struck with, as what you were just talking about, was her being so enthralled with the landscape and the land and the water and the mountains in Montana. Like that really spoke to her. In a way that I think really, honestly, propelled the story, because as we get into it more, her relationship with her daughter and Pennsylvania, right, was fraught, I think, and it was so interesting how Montana, she sort of described how it felt like home, and she'd never felt at home anywhere before, and how that's not where her family is. That's not where the people who want to be with her are. So that neither her son nor her daughter, right? So it's just really interesting how, even though that wasn't, a lot of times, even though, your grandchildren are so important to you, she didn't want to, she just couldn't be there. She needed to be in Montana, it felt like. It felt like that's the place that she needed to be to live. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and I think that, sometimes when you live in a place for a while, you can have a painful past. And when you go someplace new, you have the opportunity to reinvent yourself.
Yep.
And I think she really appreciated that she could meet people and they would just view her as Rachel, the traveling person who was happy to meet them and hear their story and enjoyed, as you were saying, I think you described it really well. Her connection to the land was this very vibrant force that I think helped her survive longer with with this very difficult diagnosis, because she had all these things that she wanted to live for, and to go out and go on these hikes and find the hot springs and just have all these incredible adventures.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been a big world traveler and backpacker type, and I that's one of the things I love about it, is when you're out in the world in a new place, you are completely inventing yourself anew every time. You can be whoever you want. You can be yourself. You're not your upbringing. You're not your job. You're not your past. You can be whoever you are and want to be. And if that's something new, invent it.
Right.
All the better.
No, definitely.
And everyone else is doing that too. So it's so interesting. Like, you're kind of getting the best of people, I feel like, when that's happening. Like, they're most authentic in a way, because it's unfettered by all of the things that create their identity at home. It's super compelling. So like that part of the story, like the traveling and hiking, and that really resonated with me, and made her more endearing to me too. It was like, I get that. Like I sort of got her a little bit more in that way. So I'm super interested in that. I want to talk a little bit more. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll be right back with more Art Watch. Welcome back to Art Watch. I'm Amie Potsic, and we're talking with artist and filmmaker Martin Krafft about his award-winning film Ain't Got Time to Die. So, Martin, as we were talking before the break, there's a deep juxtaposition between Rachel's battles with cancer and her desire for extreme adventure, right? Barefoot, mountain hiking, hot springs, living out of her RV. What conversations do you hope the film sparks around illness, autonomy, and ultimately resilience?
So I think when someone gets diagnosed with a terminal illness, they really should get to call the shots as much as possible. I don't think anyone should be able to tell you how to die. None of the doctors were saying like, oh, I don't even think they thought that she would be capable of doing the things that she was doing. Because in between, going on these hikes, she would have these incredible bouts of pain. She would have, we would go to the emergency room. They would give her a lot of painkiller drugs, and the doctors were encouraging her to go to hospice to be able to manage her pain better, but she was really against that for as long as she could hold out, because she knew that if she was in hospice, she wouldn't be able to have these adventures. And so I think for her, she's like, as long as she had any possible capacity to go out and be outside, she wanted to do that. And I think, we have a kind of cultural aversion to talking about death and to thinking about death. And even Rachel did. She was very resistant to the idea that this cancer might kill her. And I wanted her to have, a more accepting attitude, but even that, I think, was me trying to, impose my own views about death onto her. And I think the place that I tried to end up was just being supportive with her, however she was feeling on any given day. And if she felt well enough to go to go on a hike, then we went on a hike. And if she needed to go to the hospital, then I would drive her to the hospital, or I would watch her dog while she was in the hospital. And I think I learned a lot about just trying to respect people's autonomy and their desire to live and die on their own terms.
Right. It's like it seemed, that she really refused to, acknowledge that this particular bout of illness would kill her, because she'd been through several other bouts of cancer, right? And she had survived. And so it was really interesting to see her just sort of not accept that and, sort of militantly. But to your point, that allowed her to keep living as long as she possibly could, doing the things she loved. And, you mentioned her dogs. It was so much like her dogs were like characters in the story. I mean, they were like so pivotal in her life, and I think caring for them was a big part of her living also, right? I mean, definitely. Yeah. And they were companions on the walks, like on the hikes, and they were, I feel like, it was interesting because it was like a lot of the film is like almost like a road trip. It's like a hiking and a road trip.
Yeah.
She's in the car so much, and when you're out west, you're in the car a lot like that. You're driving long distances in these incredibly beautiful but desolate landscapes, and having dogs is just such a joy in that sort of situation. So I think that was a big part of the positive side of her situation. And to your point, it's like, our reality is really what we believe it to be. We create our reality. So if she believed she could hike and live this life, she was going to do it. And therefore she could. Until her body gave out, right? I mean, until it just couldn't do it anymore. But I think her mindset was what allowed her to, and you're enabling her to do these things. Like, you very much were part of her story. I mean, you became a major presence in Rachel's life, sleeping on her couch, like as you said, driving to doctor's appointments. You started a fundraiser for her. So looking back, what did this project teach you about responsibility and your boundaries and care through documentary work overall?
Yes, I think whenever you're making artwork about someone in a disadvantaged situation, or really just any subject, you have a responsibility to them, and sometimes that can be, trying to make sure that they have enough money to pay for food and gas and just meet their daily expenses, and to try and figure out how to help make that happen. But also to, try and share agency over how they are seen. I realized making the film that I have limited capacity to offer support, and I think how much capacity I had was always changing, and it was kind of responding to the given moment, and I kept thinking that I'd reached my capacity, and then I would find how I could help a little bit more. And for me, it was a very intuitive process of just kind of yes or no, like, do I have capacity to help in this way? And a lot of times the answer was yes, and sometimes it was no. And when it was no, then I had to figure out how to kind of make sure that Rachel was able to get support from somebody else for a while. And I think that the way that the community kept showing up for her, she just kind of instantly created community wherever she went, because people saw her a lot of times in need, but very stubborn, very, very self-reliant. And she was, she didn't want to ask for help, but people would see that she needed help and sometimes offer her help. And she just kind of created these little pockets of community everywhere, because she just wanted to live so much and wanted to do all these things that she couldn't do by herself. So maybe that would be me helping her, but lots of other people helped her as well. And sometimes they would get worn out too. And so, I think it's a very complicated when you're in community with somebody who is really struggling, has very limited capacities sometimes. But I think that the way that I got through it was working with the other people in Rachel's orbit to work together to make sure that she had what she needed, and not try and do it all by ourselves, because that just wouldn't be viable with the amount of care that she needed.
Right. Well, and I mean, it's amazing how you stepped up for her as, a friend, and also as the person doing this documentary. It was an unusual level of stepping up, I think. She mentions a few times in the film that, the title of the film, right, Ain't Got Time to Die, she's talking about, like, I'm going to meet my soulmate this year. So, like, I don't have time to die. Like, I've got plans, right? And I was wondering, I was thinking, soulmates are not always romantic. Like, what if you were her soulmate that she found?
Yeah, I think in some ways I was, in that, she had never really felt, or not often felt, understood and heard and just allowed to exist as she was, and to be treated with somebody wanting to take the time to listen to her and to hear her story. And that, I think that was the most important thing that I tried to provide her. And I'm really grateful for the film, that the creation of it kind of provided a reason for us to spend all this time together.
Right.
And I think it allowed us both to reflect on our lives and our friendship and the natural world around us.
Absolutely. And so, when you're looking back now, what do you hope viewers carry with them after watching the film and hearing Rachel's story, and how has this shaped the direction of your future work?
It's so cliche to talk about how, finite life is, but when you see someone with terminal cancer, it just is so present, like how important it is to be grateful for our lives. And so I try to really mirror the gratitude that she brought to being able to have the adventures that she did. And I think it's really solidified for me just the importance of making stories that have complex characters and allowing them to exist as they are. So I'm currently just finished up a collaborative hybrid documentary about the farm in Schwenksville where I have been living. And the film's called Grampy's Red Rock Rabbit Ranch. My collaborator Laura Asherman and I just started submitting to film festivals, so we'll
great.
Have our fingers crossed for that.
Great. Well, good luck with that. I look forward to seeing that film as well. This project is so poignant and lovely, and difficult. It's got all of the elements that you're expressing, and definitely drives home gratitude for doing what you can while you can, with what you have, and keeping as positive an attitude as you can throughout. Right? I mean, and the ending of the way that you edited the ending of the film was just so beautifully done, interspersing her dialogue without any visuals throughout, and then sort of seeing her at the end was so powerful, and I really appreciated sort of the artistry that you brought to that. It was really great. And Martin, I want to thank you so much for being here today. It's been such a pleasure talking to you and hearing about the film.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Amy, and for providing this service to the Philly artists.
Absolutely. My pleasure. So to learn more about Martin's work and film, go to martinkrafft.com/ain'tgottimetodie. Check out also his new upcoming film that he's just releasing. And join us Wednesdays on Art Watch from 1 to 1:30 p.m. Eastern on WCHE 95.3 FM and 1520 AM. Recent podcasts of Art Watch can be found on 953wche.com, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. You can also find the podcast of this episode and more information on my guest at amiepotsicartadvisory.com. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next week.